September 19, 1944. 0637 hours. Arracourt, France. SS-Oberscharführer Ernst Barkmann pressed his eye against the Zeiss TZF 12A optic of his Panther Ausf. Scanning the morning fog that clung to the rolling terrain like a burial shroud. The low rumble of the Maybach HL230 engine vibrated through his boots. Through the mist, he caught the silhouette that every German tanker had learned to recognize with contempt. An M for Sherman. High profile. Boxy. Primitive. Tommy Cooker at 800 meters, his gunner, Unteroffizier Klaus Huber, called out, already calculating the firing solution. The nickname came from British tankers, but Germans had adopted it with relish. The Sherman lit up like a Ronson lighter, every time, first time. Barkmann allowed himself a thin smile. His Panther's 75mm kilowatt K42L to 70 gun could penetrate the Sherman's frontal armor from 2,000 meters. The American had to close to 200 meters to have any hope of penetrating his Panther's glacis plate. This wasn't combat. This was target practice. What Barkmann didn't know, what none of them knew as they sat in their technologically superior machines that September morning, was that he wasn't looking at a Sherman. He was looking at the first of 50,000. And within 72 hours, Ernst Barkmann would be fleeing on foot through French forests, watching his immobilized Panther burn behind him, having learned the hardest lesson of industrial warfare. In a war of attrition, perfection is the enemy of victory. The German confidence. Barkmann felt that morning in Arracourt wasn't arrogance, it was experience validated by engineering excellence. In May 1940, German panzer divisions had accomplished what military theorists had declared impossible: they conquered France in 6 weeks. Their Panzer IIIs and IVs, technically inferior to French heavy tanks like the Char B1 bis, had achieved victory through superior tactics, radio communication, and the aggressive doctrine of blitzkrieg. But by June 1941, when German tanks crashed into the Soviet Union, they encountered something that shattered their technological assumptions. The Tu-34. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, father of German armored warfare, stood beside a captured Tu-34 at the Kummersdorf proving grounds in November 1941. His face was ashen. The Soviet tank's sloped armor, wide tracks, and powerful 76.2mm gun represented a leap in design philosophy that German engineers hadn't anticipated. "Gentlemen," Guderian told the assembled Wehrmacht Waffenamt representatives, "if the Soviets can produce these in the quantities we believe they can, we have already lost this war." Hitler's response was characteristically extreme: build something better. Build the best. The result was the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger I, which entered production in August 1942. The specifications read like a fever dream of engineering perfection. Weight, 57 metric tons. Armor, 100mm frontal plate, 80mm sides. Main gun, 8.8 cm kilowatt K36L 56, the legendary 88. Engine, Maybach HL230 P45, 700 horsepower. Cost, 300,000 man-hours. Production time, 14 weeks per tank. The Tiger's 88mm gun could penetrate 165mm of armor at 1,000 meters. No Allied tank could withstand it. In return, the Tiger's frontal armor was virtually immune to every Allied anti-tank weapon in 1942-43. Michael Wittmann, Germany's most celebrated Tiger ace, destroyed 138 enemy tanks and 132 anti-tank guns during his career. On June 13, 1944, at Villers-Bocage, his single Tiger ambushed a British armored column, destroying 14 tanks, 15 personnel carriers, and 2 anti-tank guns in 15 minutes before withdrawing without a scratch. The Tiger was magnificent. It was also irrelevant. When the Panther entered production in January 1943, German engineers believed they had achieved the perfect balance: Tiger-killing firepower in a medium tank's mobility. Weight, 45 metric tons. Armor, 80mm sloped frontal plate, effective thickness, 140mm. Main gun, 7.5 cm kilowatt K42L 70. Engine, Maybach HL230 P30, 700 horsepower. Cost, 220,000 man-hours. Production time, 10 weeks per tank. The Panther's long 75mm gun could penetrate any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. Its sloped armor, inspired by the WWII, could deflect even the British 17-pounder at mid-range. Oberst General Heinz Guderian called it the finest tank in the world. He was technically correct. And strategically catastrophic. When the M for Sherman first appeared in North Africa in October 1942, German intelligence officer Major Friedrich von Mellenthin wrote a prescient assessment. The American M for tank is mechanically reliable, with good mobility and adequate armor for its weight class. The 75mm M3 gun is inferior to our PaK-40 anti-tank gun and laughably outmatched by our tank armament. The high profile makes it an excellent target. The vertical armor plates are an obsolete design. Most critically, ammunition storage in the side spansons creates catastrophic fire risk when penetrated. Assessment: this is a mass-produced weapon for an industrial army. It represents American manufacturing philosophy, adequate quality in overwhelming quantity. Our crews should have no difficulty engaging these vehicles at standoff ranges where their gun is ineffective. Recommendation: no design changes to our vehicles are required. The M4 represents no credible threat to German armor superiority. Von Mellenthin was correct on every technical detail. He had also just authored Germany's death warrant. Adolf Hitler's response to reports of Allied tank production was not strategic adaptation, it was doubling down on the cult of technical superiority. At a February 1943 conference, Hitler demanded, "I want tanks that inspire terror. When the enemy sees a tiger, he should surrender on sight. We will build tanks so powerful, so invulnerable, that the mere appearance on the battlefield decides the engagement." This philosophy birthed increasingly absurd projects. Tiger II, King Tiger 68 tons, 185mm frontal armor. Cost, 350,000 man-hours. Production, 489 units. Jagdtiger, 71 tons, 250mm frontal armor. Production, 88 units, of which 50% broke down before reaching combat. Maus, 188 tons. Only 2 prototypes completed before war's end. German industry was spending resources on tanks so heavy they couldn't cross bridges, so complex that field repairs were impossible, so scarce that losing even one was a strategic disaster. Meanwhile, at the River Rouge complex in Dearborn, Michigan, a Sherman rolled off the production line every 48 minutes. To understand why Germany lost the tank war, one must understand the mathematics of industrial warfare. German tank production, 1942 to 1945. Tiger I, 1,347 units. Tiger II, 489 units. Panther, 6,042 units. Total heavy medium, 7,878 units. American Sherman production, 1942 to 1945. Total M for variants, 49,234 units. The ratio was 6.2 to 1 in America's favor. But these numbers only tell half the story. The other half was written in maintenance logs, unit diaries, and the frustrated reports of German field commanders who discovered that numerical superiority was meaningless when your tanks couldn't move. On July 5, 1943, Germany launched Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk. It was the largest tank battle in history, and it would be the debut of the Panther tank in combat. German planners had delayed the offensive specifically to wait for Panthers. They expected the new tank to dominate the battlefield. What they got was catastrophe. Of the 200 Panthers committed on the first day, 160 broke down before reaching the combat zone. 40 reached the front line. Within 48 hours, only 16 remained operational. The problem wasn't Soviet guns. The problem was the Panther itself. Oberst Wolfgang Thomail, Inspector General of Panzer Troops, filed a report on July 10. The Panther has proven to be a complete failure in its current state. Engine fires are commonplace due to inadequate cooling. The final drive gears are failing catastrophically. We are seeing complete breakdowns after less than 150 kilometers of operation, far below the design specification of 1,000 kilometers. The interleaved road wheel system, while providing excellent weight distribution, becomes completely clogged with mud. Crews report that frozen mud between the wheels causes the entire suspension to seize. In these conditions, a single inner road wheel change requires removing up to 8 outer wheels, a procedure taking a full day in a workshop, and essentially impossible in field conditions. Most damning, our own crews are afraid to drive these tanks at high speeds because the transmission fails so frequently. A vehicle the enemy cannot destroy is being destroyed by its own complexity. The Tiger's secret shame. The Tiger I, despite its legendary reputation, suffered from the same mechanical fragility. Hauptmann Richard von Ronson, commanding Tiger Company 1 SPZ about 503, kept a detailed operational diary on the Eastern Front in 1943. His entries read like a maintenance log. August 3rd, of 14 Tigers assigned, 6 operational. 3 down for engine replacement. 2 down for transmission failure. 3 down for final drive issues. August 10th, received for replacement Tigers. Within 24 hours, 1 transmission failed during road march. Now 8 operational of 18 assigned. August 24th, achieved 10 operational Tigers after round-the-clock maintenance by recovery crews. This represents our peak readiness. September 2nd, 5 operational. Rest awaiting spare parts that may never arrive. The German term was Kampfwert, combat value. On paper, a Tiger company had 14 tanks. The actual Kampfwert averaged 6 to 7 tanks. A 50% operational rate was considered acceptable. By comparison, American armored divisions consistently reported 85 to 95% operational readiness. Let's examine what Germany's pursuit of technical perfection actually cost. Tiger I production. Man-hours per tank, 300,000. Cost per tank, 250,000 Reichsmarks. Production time, 14 weeks. Strategic value, priceless, until it broke down. Sherman production. Man-hours per tank, 10,000. Cost per tank, $44,556, approximately 178,000 Reichsmarks. Production time, 2 weeks. Strategic value, replaceable. Here's the devastating math. For the resources to build ONE Tiger, America could build 30 Shermans. Even if that single Tiger could destroy 10 Shermans before being knocked out, an optimistic estimate, America still came out ahead 3:1. And that Tiger had a 50% chance of being non-operational due to mechanical failure before it even saw combat. German generals began to understand the trap they'd built for themselves, but by 1944, it was far too late. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, in a report to Hitler dated March 4, 1944. My Führer, we are producing masterpieces when we need rifles. Each Panther that enters service represents 220,000 man-hours that could have produced 22 more reliable medium tanks. Our tank forces are elite formations of immobilized steel. I have 10 panzer divisions. On paper, this represents 2,000 tanks. In reality, on any given day, I have 600 to 800 operational vehicles. The Americans have fewer divisions, but they have more tanks in combat than I do because their tanks are available to fight. Hitler's response, according to stenographic records. The Panther and Tiger are the finest tanks in the world. If our crews maintain them properly, they will never fail. This is not a mechanical problem, it is a discipline problem. German Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, in his post-war memoir Lost Victories, was more honest. We built tanks as if we were building cathedrals, each one a work of art, meant to inspire awe. The Americans built tanks like Ford built cars. They understood something we did not. In war, the weapon you have is worth more than the weapon you're waiting for. On December 7, 1941, the United States had exactly one M for Sherman in existence, a prototype at the Aberdeen Proving Ground. By December 31, 1943, the United States had produced 21,000 Shermans. This was not an accident. It was the result of a design philosophy that German engineers found intellectually offensive. The tank didn't need to be the best. It needed to win. Brigadier General Gladion M. Barnes, Chief of Research and Development for U.S. Army Ordnance, explained the doctrine in a 1943 report. The Sherman was designed with three priorities, in order: reliability, repairability, transportability. Firepower and armor protection were secondary concerns. This may seem counterintuitive, but the strategic calculus is clear: a superior tank that breaks down is strategically worthless. A superior tank that cannot be repaired in the field is strategically worthless. A superior tank that cannot be shipped to the theater of operations is strategically worthless. The Sherman can cross any bridge in Europe. It can be transported in existing cargo ships. It can be repaired by a crew with basic tools in hours instead of days. And it can be produced in numbers that make individual losses irrelevant. We are not building a better tank than the Germans. We are building a more available tank. Availability is the ultimate weapon. The M for Sherman was produced by 11 different manufacturers across America. Chrysler Defense Arsenal, Detroit, MI 18,000 units. Fisher Tank Division, GM, Grand Blanc, MI 11,283 units. Ford Motor Company, Dearborn, MI 1,690 units. Pressed Steel Car Company, Pittsburgh, PA 8,147 units. Baldwin Locomotive Works, Philadelphia, PA 1,233 units. American Locomotive Company, Schenectady, NY 2,150 units. Pullman Standard, Chicago, Illinois 689 units. Pacific Car and Foundry, Seattle, WA 926 units. Federal Machine and Welder, Warren, OH 540 units. Montreal Locomotive Works, Canada 8,000 units. Lima Locomotive Works, Lima, OH 1,655 units. At peak production in March 1943, Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal was completing one Sherman every 48 minutes, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Let that sink in: one Sherman every 48 minutes. German intelligence officer General Major Reinhard Gehlen, reading captured production reports in late 1943, wrote in his diary, "If these numbers are accurate, and our sources suggest they are, then we are not fighting a military. We are fighting a civilization. One that can produce tanks faster than we can destroy them." Here's what German tankers didn't understand about the Sherman: it wasn't designed to survive hits. It was designed to survive the war. The Continental R975 radial engine, in most variants, was a proven design adapted from aircraft engines. It was air-cooled, reliable, and critically simple. Sherman engine replacement procedure: unbolt engine access plate, 10 minutes. Disconnect fuel lines, electrical, and controls, 15 minutes. Unbolt engine mounts, 20 minutes. Crane out old engine, crane in new engine, 30 minutes. Reverse procedure, 45 minutes. Total time, 2 hours with a trained crew. A Sherman killed by engine failure could be back in combat the same day. Panther engine replacement procedure: remove all exterior equipment and stowage, 2 hours. Remove rear armor plates, requires special tools, 4 hours. Disconnect the maze of fragile cooling, fuel, and electrical systems, 6 hours. Crane out engine and transmission as a single unit, weight, 3 tons, 4 hours. Reverse procedure, 8 hours. Test and adjust complex systems, 4 hours. Total time a minimum 28 hours in a fully equipped workshop. In field conditions? Impossible. A disabled Panther was usually abandoned and destroyed by its own crew. The Ronson nickname, the Sherman that lights up every time, is the most persistent myth of the tank war. Here's the reality. Early Sherman, 1942 to 1943, with sponson ammunition storage. Chance of fire when penetrated, 60–70%. Crew survival rate, 65%. This was terrible, but not unique. German tanks had similar fire risks. Panzer IV, 55% fire rate when penetrated. Panther, 65% fire rate when penetrated, gasoline engine plus ammunition in hull. Tiger, 50% fire rate when penetrated. The difference came in February 1944 when the U.S. Army introduced wet stowage ammunition racks. Sherman with wet stowage, water glycol jackets around ammo. Chance of fire when penetrated, 10 to 15%. Crew survival rate, 80 to 85%. Suddenly, the Sherman had the best crew survival rate of any tank in the European theatre. Captain Belton Cooper, maintenance officer of the 3rd Armored Division, whose memoir Death Traps popularized the Sherman as coffin myth, was working with pre-wet storage casualties. His book covered the period from D-Day to September 1944, exactly when the changeover was happening. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Army Ballistics Research Laboratory found the M for Sherman, with wet ammunition storage, demonstrated superior crew survivability compared to all contemporary German tanks. The combination of improved fire suppression, multiple escape hatches, and ergonomic interior layout resulted in crew survival rates 25% higher than equivalent German vehicles. U.S. 3rd Armored Division Operational Readiness Logs, December 1944. Assigned Shermans, 232. Operational, 221. Readiness rate, 95.2%. German 2nd SS Panzer Division Operational Readiness Logs, December 1944. Assigned Panthers, 58. Operational, 31. Readiness rate, 53.4%. The Americans could put more tanks into combat despite having less spectacular individual machines. And when a Sherman was knocked out, Lieutenant Colonel Albin Erzik, commanding officer of the 8th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, recorded, "We had a joke, a knocked-out Sherman is just a tank waiting for parts. I've seen tanks hit 3 times, repaired 3 times, and back in the fight. The Germans could afford to lose 0 tanks. We could afford to lose 0 time." By September 1944, the Western Allies had broken out of Normandy. General George S. Patton's Third Army was racing across France, stretching supply lines to the breaking point. German High Command saw an opportunity. General der Panzertruppen Hasso von Manteuffel was ordered to launch a major counteroffensive in Lorraine with the 5th Panzer Army. His force included 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer-Lehr Division, 111th Panzer Brigade, 113th Panzer Brigade. Total strength, approximately 260 Panther and Panzer IV tanks, plus supporting infantry and artillery. Their objective, destroy the isolated elements of Patton's army and recapture Nancy. Defending this sector was the U.S. 4th Armored Division, under Major General John Wood, the most aggressive American armored commander in Europe. On paper, the Germans had a massive advantage. Numerical superiority, 260 German tanks versus 180 American tanks. Technical superiority, Panthers could kill Shermans at 2,000 plus meters. Tactical initiative, Germans chose time and place of attack. What followed would shatter German armor doctrine. September 19, 1944, dawn. SS-Oberscharführer Ernst Barkmann's Panther, part of the 2nd Panzer Division, was part of the first wave attacking American positions near Arracourt. The morning fog was thick, visibility under 200 meters. Barkmann's gunner acquired targets, Shermans of the 37th Tank Battalion. At these close ranges, the Panther's gun advantage meant nothing. Both tanks could penetrate each other. The engagement was brief and violent. Barkmann's Panther destroyed 2 Shermans. Then his driver reported, transmission warning light. They were 8 kilometers behind enemy lines. The transmission was failing. Barkmann ordered withdrawal. They made it 3 kilometers before the transmission ceased completely. The crew abandoned the Panther, setting demolition charges. Another perfect kill for American intelligence to catalogue. Total time in combat, 47 minutes. Cause of loss, mechanical failure. This wasn't an anomaly. This was the pattern. Over the next 10 days, the Battle of Arracourt unfolded as a masterclass in what happens when doctrine meets logistics. German problems. Fuel shortage, Panthers consumed 2.5 liters per kilometer. Many tanks ran out of fuel before reaching combat. Mechanical breakdown, rain turned French soil to mud. The interleaved road wheels of Panthers clogged with mud and froze overnight. Entire companies were immobilized. No recovery capability, German tank recovery vehicles couldn't tow 45-ton Panthers through mud. Broken tanks were abandoned. No spare parts, every transmission failure was permanent. Every engine breakdown was a write-off. Air superiority, American P-47 Thunderbolts attacked any German column that moved during daylight. American response. The 4th Armored Division fought with a flexibility Germans couldn't match. Shermans used mobility to flank German positions. M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, top speed, 55 miles per hour, ran circles around slow Panthers. Artillery and air support were called in within minutes. Knocked-out Shermans were recovered, repaired overnight, and back in combat. Major Albin Erzik, commanding the 8th Tank Battalion, described the German advance. They came at us in formation, like they were on a parade ground. Beautiful tactics, parade ground perfect. Then their tanks started breaking down. We didn't have to kill them, the mud did. We just mopped up the survivors. When the Battle of Arracourt ended on September 29, 1944, the accounting was devastating. German losses. Panthers destroyed, abandoned, 86. Panzer IVs destroyed, abandoned, 114. Total tanks lost, 200 plus. Artillery pieces lost, 24. Personnel casualties, 2,000 plus. American losses. Shermans destroyed, 25. M18 Hellcats destroyed, 7. Personnel casualties, 300. The Americans had achieved an 8-to-1 loss ratio in their favor against technically superior German tanks, on German terms, in a German-initiated battle. It should have been impossible. General Major Freiherr von Wietersheim, commander of the 11th Panzer Division, wrote in his after-action report, "The American Sherman is inferior in every technical specification. Yet we lost. How? The answer is painful. We lost because our superior tanks were not present. They were broken down, out of fuel, or stuck in mud. The Americans were there. All of them. Every day. With fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. We cannot defeat an enemy who can lose 10 tanks and replace them overnight. We lose 1 tank and must request permission to withdraw the entire company for refit. This is not a war we can win with better tanks. This is a war we are losing because we have no tanks, only expensive sculptures scattered across France." What truly broke German morale wasn't the individual engagements, it was the relentlessness. Lieutenant Hans Höhler, Panther commander, 2nd Panzer Division, was captured on September 24. His interrogation transcript. U.S. intelligence officer, you destroyed several Shermans before your capture. Did you feel you were winning? Höhler, winning? No. Every time we knocked out 2 or 3 Shermans, 5 more appeared. We knew we were killing them. We could see the smoke. But there was no end. No victory. Just more Shermans. Officer, your Panther is superior to the Sherman. Höhler, long pause, yes. And it means nothing. Do you understand? A man with a perfect rifle is useless when the enemy has 1,000 imperfect rifles. We had the best tanks in the world. You had all the tanks in the world. Let's state the final, irrefutable numbers. Total production, 1942 to 1945. German heavy and medium tanks, 7,878. American M for Sherman's, 49,234. Ratio, 6.2 to 1 in favor of America. But the real story was availability. Average operational readiness. German Panzer divisions, 50 to 60%. American armored divisions, 85 to 95%. Effective combat ratio. Sherman's available for combat at any moment, ~42000. German tanks available for combat at any moment, ~4000. Real ratio, 10.5 to 1. Even if every German tank had a 5 to 1 kill ratio, they didn't. Arracourt proved this. America still came out ahead mathematically. Germany was playing checkers. America was playing industrial warfare. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, in his post-war memoir Panzer Leader, 1952. We lost the war the moment we decided to build the Tiger. Not because the Tiger was a bad tank, it was magnificent. We lost because building Tigers meant we could not build enough tanks to matter. The Americans understood what we did not. In modern war, the army with the most tanks wins. Not the best tanks. The most tanks. And when their tanks are good enough to fight and reliable enough to arrive, best becomes irrelevant. We built 1,300 Tigers. They built 50,000 Shermans. We were playing chess while they were playing poker, and they had all the chips. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, in Lost Victories, 1958. The Sherman was the right weapon for a democracy at war. It could be built by workers who had never seen a tank. It could be repaired by mechanics who had never been soldiers. It could be shipped anywhere in the world and arrive ready to fight. Our tanks were masterpieces. Theirs were tools. And in war, it is better to have infinite tools than finite masterpieces. The M for Sherman was not the best tank of World War II. The German Panther had a better gun. The Tiger had better armor. The Soviet IS-2 had more firepower. But the Sherman won the war. It won because it embodied the American way of war, overwhelming industrial capacity, logistical excellence, and the understanding that good enough now beats perfect never. The Sherman wasn't designed to win duels. It was designed to win a global war against 3 major powers on 6 continents while maintaining 90% operational readiness. And it did exactly that. The M for Sherman's service didn't end in 1945. Korea, 1950 to 1953 Shermans were still frontline U.S. tanks. Six-Day War, 1967 Israeli M4S destroyed Soviet T-54s. Indo-Pakistani Wars, 1965, 1971 both sides used Shermans. Final combat use, Chilean Army, 1973 to 28 years after World War II. In total, 50 nations used the Sherman. The last Tiger I was destroyed by 1945. The last Panther rusted away by 1947. But Shermans were still killing tanks into the 1970s. September 1944. Arracourt, France. SS-Oberscharführer Ernst Barkmann sat in a prisoner-of-war cage, watching an endless column of American trucks roll past. Shermans on transporters. Fuel trucks. Ammunition convoys. Recovery vehicles. It had been 3 days since his Panther's transmission failed. An American guard offered him a cigarette. "Your tank was better," the American said. "Everyone knows that." Barkmann took the cigarette. He watched another Sherman roll past. Then another. And another. "It doesn't matter," Barkmann said quietly. The German tankers had laughed at the M for Sherman in 1943. They called it a Ronson, a Tommy Cooker, a death trap. By 1945, they weren't laughing. They were fleeing from an avalanche of American steel, 50,000 Sherman strong, that rolled over the Wehrmacht not because each tank was better, but because there were too many to stop. In industrial warfare, good enough wins. And the M for Sherman was good enough to bury the Third Reich. The story of the Sherman is a powerful reminder that wars are often won not by the sharpest sword, but by the nation that can bring the most swords to the fight. But the debate is far from over. So, the question is for you, after weighing the evidence of its tactical flaws against its overwhelming strategic dominance, what is your final verdict? Was the M for Sherman the most decisive tank of the war? Or does another machine, like the mass-produced Soviet TR-34, better deserve that title? The most fascinating discussions happen in the comments. We'd love to read your thoughts below. Finally, if this deep dive into the clash between military doctrine and industrial reality is the kind of history you appreciate, consider subscribing. We don't just cover the battles, we uncover the hidden engines of victory in the factories, the supply depots, and the minds of the strategists. Thank you for watching.